I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the first arrest is made in the wave of bomb threats against Jewish communities in the U.S. Israel officially decriminalizes marijuana today, and an Israeli zoo goes to drastic measures to keep an endangered monkey alive. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. It looks like there's finally a lead to who's behind the shocking wave of bomb threats targeting Jewish communities in the United States. The first suspect has been arrested, and his name is Juan Thompson. The 31-year-old Missouri resident is suspected of carrying out 8 copycat threats, mostly by email. All occurred after the first flood of phone threats in early January. Prosecutors say he perpetrated the acts in his ex-girlfriend's name as part of a bizarre campaign to make her look like an anti-Semite as well as a child pornographer. His alleged targets include a Jewish museum in New York and the ADL Anti-Defamation League that monitors hate groups. But the ADL says Thompson's been on their radar even before that because of his history of public rants against white people. Thompson had been a reporter for the Intercept News website until being fired last year on suspicion of fabricating sources and quotes. On Friday, the suspect had his first appearance in a St. Louis court on one count of cyberstalking. Now he's expected to remain in federal custody until his likely extradition to New York to face prosecution. Detectives are also questioning him about the desecration of 154 gravestones at a Jewish cemetery in St. Louis last month. Meanwhile, American authorities are continuing to probe more than 100 additional threats against Jewish community centers in the United States, which appear to be unrelated to Thompson. While the ADL is praising law enforcement officials for arresting the St. Louis man, the group is urging the federal government to implement wider action to address the nationwide surge of anti-Semitism.
Just because there's been an arrest today around our bomb threat does not mean that the threats have disappeared or will stop. Hate towards the Jewish community and other minority groups is very real and deeply concerning. NYPD has seen a 115% increase in anti-Semitic hate crimes in the first 6 weeks of 2017 versus the first 6 weeks of 2016. There is a lot of work that still needs to be done.
FBI Director James Comey has been meeting with Jewish leaders to discuss the ongoing investigation into at least 200 incidents targeting Jews and Jewish institutions throughout the United States since the beginning of this year. The hate campaign includes verbal and written threats as well as vandalism. The 5 major waves of telephone hoaxes have forced the evacuation of at least 73 Jewish facilities in 30 U.S. states and even 1 Canadian province. In New Jersey, several politicians are making public calls for unity and tolerance.
We are here today, yes, as a response to hate, but please, let me tell you, that's not the fullness of the reason why we are here. We are here because of an affirmation of love.
There are those who have hate in their hearts based upon many, many different factors, but none of them are justified. And if we don't stand up and speak out, not only about the fact that any type of bias act is intolerable, but to also speak about the opposite side of how much this diversity brings to life's experiences, how much better it makes us as a
U.S. President Donald Trump has also condemned the threats and attacks, although he's also questioned whether some of the perpetrators might be opponents of his administration and are deliberately trying to link his new presidency with the rise in anti-Semitism. For the past 2 years, Saudi Arabia and its Gulf Arab allies have carried out thousands of bombing raids against Islamist Houthi rebel militia who have seized large swaths of territory in Yemen. Now, over the weekend, a protest in the streets of Yemen against Saudi Arabia has quickly turned into an ugly opportunity to rage against Israel and the United States. Tens of thousands of Houthi supporters are protesting the Saudi-led coalition's airstrikes on Yemen. Since March of 2015, parts of the population have been on the edge of starvation, including 500,000 children under the age of 5. The deputy minister of propaganda, who was appointed by the Iranian-backed Shiite rebels, is now railing against world apathy over the conflict.
خلال عامين من هذا العدوان الظالم والذي يحظى بتواطؤ وصمت دولي منقطع النظير، شهدنا الكثير من التردي في الحالات الصحية والاقتصادية. هذا الحصار الجائر يمنع حتى دخول الدواء عن للمجتمع اليمني، ونقول إننا صامدون رغم هذا الحصار.
The Houthis' ideology has long been anti-American and anti-Semitic. During the march on Saturday, children waved toy versions of drone airplanes, and they also carried signs bearing the group's slogan reading, "God is great, death to the U.S., death to Israel," as well as "Curse the Jews and victory for Islam." The Israeli government is on a mission to bar the organization Human Rights Watch from the country for allegedly promoting Palestinian propaganda and falsely posing as a human rights group. But is that truly the case? ILTV's Steve Leibowitz sat down with the head of NGO Monitor, Dr. Gerald Steinberg, to find out.
The controversy began because of one individual by the name of Omar Shakir that Human Rights Watch appointed as their Palestinian researcher. There is an Israeli researcher, her name is Sari Bashi. She's an Israeli, and they also appointed a Palestinian, or some named Omar Shakir, to do the Palestinian part of this. And then they wanted him to get a work permit. Now, Omar Shakir is a well-known BDS activist. The evidence is all over the place. He hates Israel, to make it short and to the point. Why would he want to work in Israel? What's the purpose of this? So as a provocation, was it stupidity on the part of Human Rights Watch? But you look at their history and you see the degree to which they obsessively have campaigned against Israel. They were one of the key organizations behind the Durban NGO Forum back in September 2001 that repeatedly labeled Israel an apartheid state. They took the South African apartheid model and said, we're going to use this against Israel. They were behind the appointment of Goldstone, the whole Goldstone farce, the UN allegedly investigatory commission that took place in 2009 about Gaza. They had a senior researcher who was basically a Nazi, obsessive Nazi collector who liked to have himself pictured in SS jackets, thought it was cool.
Do they only deal with us? Do they only deal with Israel, or do they have other issues around the world? There's plenty of human rights violations that are real.
The heads of the organizations are obsessed by Israel. Ken Roth in particular has a personal history there. And then their Middle East division is maybe half of what they do. They ignored Syria. They went to Saudi Arabia back in 2009 to raise money to lobby against Israel, not to deal with the issue of human rights violations in Saudi Arabia. So the people who run that, and they haven't changed at all, are obsessed by Israel. So there's this tremendous spin in what they do. I think that, and I know that I've talked to some other people in Human Rights Watch who are not dealing with Israel or the Middle East, and they also find it disturbing. People who deal with Africa, deal with Latin America and human rights violations in Asia, see the Israel obsession as something that really hurts the organization, and they're probably right.
But it seems clear, based on the things that you've been saying, that, or it's well known, that they are politically tainted. How much power do they really have? I mean, do they have political backing of governments?
There's a lot more skepticism about NGOs like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty and all the Israeli groups and the Palestinian groups than there was 15 years ago when I started doing this. But there's something called the halo effect, and it's used by academics. I also use that term a lot, which has in many ways and continues to protect these very powerful political organizations from serious analysis. So you get an announcement from Human Rights Watch that Israel has discriminated against and refuses to have human rights, which is a lot of it is just spin. And it comes out and it gets across, and we track this across the journalistic world on Friday and yesterday. In every major newspaper, they start with the Human Rights Watch spin on this. It's a $70 million organization, most of which is spent on PR. The research part, certainly in the Middle East, is a facade. And so that does take advantage of the democratic process and needs to be at least countered.
Iran has gone ahead and successfully test-fired a sophisticated Russian-made air defense system following years of warnings from Israel. Reports of the test came out during a recent military exercise in the Islamic Republic, where the Iranian army shot various flying objects and missiles in the air to see if their new S-300 defense system would strike them down successfully. The Russian-made system is developed to track and hit enemy aircraft from up to 125 miles away. For years, the Israeli government had been urging the Russian president to delay shipping the S-300 system to Iran, but in 2016, Putin went ahead and signed an $800 billion contract with Tehran to ship the advanced defense missiles to the country. Israel has long feared that Iran will use the missile system against Israeli planes, but Iran has continued to claim that the S-300 will be used to protect the country's nuclear installations. Since 1993, the IDF has legally protected gay and lesbian soldiers from discrimination. But unfortunately, there's still lots of progress yet to be made. Joining me today in the studio is Omer Nachman, a former combat officer in the IDF Artillery Corps, who's made it his mission to empower gay and transgender soldiers in the IDF by starting an organization called Geva Kahol Lavan. Thanks so much for coming in, Omar.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening here in Israel. So tell us about this organization. Tell us what led you to start it.
I myself I'm a reserve officer in the Artillery Corps in Israel. I was in wars, I had lots of soldiers, and I was out of the closet throughout my entire service. Throughout my service, about 30 soldiers came out of the closet to me. More than that, I had religious soldiers that came up to me and said, I didn't believe that that's what a gay person looks like, because all their lives they heard from rabbis like this, that gay people are perverts and that we are less human, or we are weird or different. And then they met an officer like me, which is just like them. More than that, I'm the commander, I'm telling them what to do. And they understood that I'm just the same. So they came out of the army and finished the army and became much more patient and more accepting citizens.
Did you feel any difficulty in being in the Israeli military as an openly gay person?
It's never easy. It was hard because I felt like I was the only one. Not many people, especially in combat places, come out of the closet and say they're gay, especially if they're officers and they have lots of responsibilities. But I have to say that the IDF is very, very pro-LGBT rights, is helping lots of LGBT and women have a successful course throughout their army. And we are my organization, Blue and White Pride, is pro-army. We're saying that we love the army. I'm a part of the Israeli army, and I love my country, and I want to help as many LGBT young people that want to do a meaningful service in the army do their meaningful service.
So what does that mean? What kind of activities exist for the people who are part of this organization? How are you trying to help these young people kind of come to terms with their identity in the military?
We haven't started yet. What you see in the back is a movie for our Head Start. We are crowdfunding from people from all around to open up groups that will prepare LGBTQ young people to have a meaningful service and come out of the closet, and help women as well have a meaningful service as combat warriors. We understood that in the Israeli society, these two groups are trying to be pushed out of the army by certain rabbis and by certain groups, and we are there to help them and have a meaningful service and teach the other Israeli young people that we're just the same.
Have you received support from the government and from the army itself?
Last week we had a convention. We launched our organization, Israel Pride ×2, and we had Congress members, Knesset members from 4 different parties, from left and right, from the Likud and from the Avodah, the Labor Party. We have a back-to-back support, except for the religious parties that don't see us as equal civilians, that don't want to see young people meet LGBTQ people in the army and understand that they're citizens like everyone. You know, the Israeli army is a meeting point for the Israeli society. Lots of people from all over the country come there, religious teens and secular teens, right and left, everybody meets in the army. And if in that meeting point, people see women fighting side to side men, they'll understand that women are just the same as men. They have the same capabilities as anybody else. If they meet a gay person, a gay officer just like me in the army, they'll understand that the gays are not only on TV or in reality shows, they're actual human beings, and we deserve the same rights because we fight and go to the army just like everybody else. So that's what we're trying to do. By helping gay teens be in the army and have a meaningful service out of the closet, and by helping women have a meaningful service in the army, we hope that the people that will come out of the army as citizens will be more accepting and more patient for different kinds of people.
Well, it seems like you are on the right path, Omar. Thank you so much for coming in.
And you can go into the Head Start website and look for Israel Pride ×2. We're there, and we'll love to have your support for opening and changing the Israeli society.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Well, in just a few weeks, Syria will mark the 6th anniversary of its civil war. So far, all efforts to resolve the crisis have failed to yield any progress, including the latest round in Geneva that just wrapped up. Damascus's chief negotiator says very little progress was achieved during 10 days of meetings in Geneva. In fact, Syrian ambassador to the UN Bashar al-Jafari says that the only thing the sides did manage to agree on is an agenda for future talks, and that the opposition should be unified. Right now, a group called the High Negotiations Committee is the main voice of the opposition, but there are also two smaller dissident factions. They don't have any military muscle, but they do enjoy Moscow's blessing as legitimate parties. According to Jafari, the agreed-upon agenda centers on 4 major conditions, the first of which is that the opposition won't seek help from any outside forces, including Israel.
المطلوب إذن شريك وطني، معارض وطني، معارض لا يعمل وفق أجندات خارجية، لا يستنجد بإسرائيل، لا يستنجد بتركيا، لا يعمل لصالح أجندات استخباراتية قطرية وسعودية وأردنية وإسرائيلية إلى آخره. هذا أول شرط. الشرط الثاني هو أن يكون لدينا معارضات تتفق على أجندة مشتركة لشيء اسمه معارض.
Jafari is also reporting that the Bashar al-Assad government is now weighing the possibility of convening the next round of Geneva talks later this month. The negotiations are being brokered by UN mediator Staffan de Mistura, who says he plans to continue separate talks with the two sides on substantive issues after reporting to the Security Council later this week. All right, here's some more exciting news. The day has finally arrived. Israel has decriminalized marijuana use today, meaning that cannabis users will no longer face criminal action if they're caught with marijuana in public. The new policy will make it so that first-time offenders who are found using marijuana in public areas will only face a fine of 1,000 shekels, or $270. Only fourth-time offenders will actually face criminal action. In the past, Israelis caught with marijuana have always had to face criminal charges. The Israeli Minister of Justice is welcoming the change to current marijuana policy, saying that it will ensure that thousands of ordinary people are no longer considered criminals. Best of all, the money collected from marijuana fines will go towards financing anti-drug education and treatment. The Ministry of Public Security says a new marijuana policy will be applied within the next few months. Now, here's another fascinating story. The oldest Jewish document of the New World is about to return to Mexico more than 7 decades after its mysterious disappearance. The document in question dates back to 1595 and is the autobiography of a Mexican Jew who was forced to convert to Christianity during the Spanish Inquisition. It's considered to be an important artifact detailing Jewish life on the North American continent during the 16th century. The manuscript reportedly resurfaced on the auction circuit in 2015 after vanishing from Mexico's National Archives more than 75 years ago. It's been at the Museum of the New York Historical Society since then and will officially return home after its long absence in a matter of days. The author Luis de Carvajal wrote the memoir about his Jewish faith under a pseudonym. During his imprisonment during the Inquisition, it was discovered by one of his cellmates who gave it to the authorities. Carvajal was then tortured, during which time the Historical Society says he broke and gave the names of more than 120 other secretly practicing Jews. After being put on trial, Carvajal was ultimately executed for his faith in 1596. The manuscript is set to go on exhibit at Mexico's Museum of Memory and Tolerance on March 12th. Very interesting. All right, it looks like the World Baseball Classic has returned for its 4th time, and Israel will be kicking off the major international event in the first game against South Korea. ILTV's Aaron Porras is here with more on the story. Aaron, what can we expect this time around?
Well, as you said, Israel will be playing both of the games on the first opening night of the tournament against South Korea and then Chinese Taipei. And 16 different nations are taking part in the tournament this year, which takes place every 4 years.
Wow.
While the event hasn't yet reached the status of the Olympics or the World Cup, popularity has been rising. Chris Park, Major League Baseball Senior VP of Growth Strategy and International, speaking at a news conference on Thursday, said, quote, "The tournament remains very much in the early innings of its development. Our ultimate ambition is to watch and supervise this tournament as it matures into a truly global platform for our game and a real competitor with the top international tournaments around the world," end quote. The Israeli team roster consists of 11 players with experience both in the major and minor leagues, and 16 more with minor league play. Thanks to WBC rules that allow anyone eligible for citizenship in a country to play for that country, this is the first time that Team Israel will have representation from American Jewish baseball players. Team Israel General Manager Peter Kurtz said, quote, "This is a very exciting roster comprised of a group of very experienced players, and that there is an incredibly high level of motivation among all these players to represent Israel at the World Baseball Classic."
All right, I'm going to be rooting for Israel. Israel-born Hollywood star Natalie Portman has yet another achievement to be celebrating. The 39-year-old actress has just given birth to her second child, a little girl named Amalia. Portman is a major idol in Israel for her illustrious career in Hollywood. The Jerusalem-born celebrity was recently nominated for Best Actress at this year's Oscars for her incredible portrayal of the former First Lady Jackie Kennedy in the film Jackie. Even though she didn't win, Portman already has an array of awards under her belt, including an Oscar for Best Actress in the 2011 film Black Swan. Portman actually met her husband Benjamin Millepied on the set of that very movie, who was responsible for coaching her in ballet to prepare for her role as a professional ballerina. The power couple already has a 5-year-old son named Aleph, and on February 22nd, they welcomed little baby Amalia into the family. Apart from being a new mommy, Portman is already preparing for her next feature film. The star is slated to perform as Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the first female Jewish U.S. Supreme Court justice, in an upcoming movie. All right, mandrill monkeys are considered to be one of the most vulnerable species in the world when born in the wild. Well, luckily, one little mandrill was fortunate enough to be born at Israel's Ramat Gan Safari Park, where staffers took dramatic measures to keep the baby monkey alive.
One of the newest residents at the park was born in an enclosure where his mother Tinkerbell lives with his big brother named Tuvia. Mandrills, which closely resemble baboons, may eventually grow into the world's largest monkeys, but they're very weak at birth. For the first 2 to 3 weeks of life, babies need to be supported by their mother's hand until they're strong enough to attach themselves to her fur. Alert Israeli zookeepers noticed Tinkerbell's newborn was failing to successfully grab on and was in danger of being inadvertently trampled while being dragged. So the infant was carefully removed and whisked to the on-site clinic. Life-saving procedures were carried out, including the warming of his body temperature and the administration of oxygen and nutrients. Once he was stabilized, the infant was returned to the arms of his grateful mama, brimming with good health.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by the University of Haifa, Hebrew Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. After learning about a crazy cute mandrill monkey being nursed back to health in an Israeli zoo, we thought we'd dedicate today's word to these furry friends. So today's word is kof, meaning monkey. Now, while kofim, or monkeys, aren't as closely related to us as their great ape cousins, we do still share a lot with the average kof. We both rely on community to raise children, we both crave warmth and contact, and we both have thumbs. We also have a long history together. Not only has humanity built temples for monkeys, we even often refer to their wisdom when we try to be like the 3 kofim who see, speak, and hear no evil, and their simplicity when we say kof see, kof do. Unfortunately, the one thing you need to keep in mind when taking notes from our distant cousins is that some things aren't just meant to be copied. You wouldn't want to be accused of kofing around. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be clear with a slight rise in temperatures and a low of 54 or 12 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect clear skies, but with a bit of wind and an additional rise in temperatures to a high of 76 or 24 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.7 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you next time.